Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of information to cover in this video today. There's been quite a whirlwind of information in the Destiny community the past couple of days with the announcement of Trials, some of the balance changes, some of the artifact changes in light level, and some of the weapon changes that Luke Smith has been talking about. I'm going to dive into all of it in this video, but I need you to smash that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with your friends. I'm going to cover everything that's been going on up until today. There's been a lot of information coming out today, even as I was going to record this video. So I'm going to try and get through it real quick, so apologies for any hiccups, but let's get right into it. So starting off, in Luke Smith's director's cut that he posted Wednesday night, he talked a lot about the future of Destiny 2 and what that entails for everybody. And I think I'm just going to touch on what seems to be the biggest point of controversy, and that seems to be some of the weapon changes that Luke Smith talked about in his director's cut. And starting off, he said, "We've made a lot of magic cards, and we want you to keep the ones you love in your collection, as opposed to taking them and throwing them all away and having the tower get destroyed again. And a bunch of those magic cards could be playable around the world while free roaming or in PvP formats. But where power matters or aspirational activities are involved, we're going to make some changes to legendary weapons." There was a lot of learning to do when Destiny launched in 2014, but there was also some real good stuff in that game. I think back on a bunch of it fondly, almost wistfully at times. The weapons from the Vault of Glass could be powerful, unique, and rare. If you had Fatebringer, you probably had a bunch of Ascendant shards to commemorate all the times you didn't get it. I know I did. That gun eluded me forever. And he basically goes on to sum up that what they need to change is there's no space for those high-end pinnacle weapons to breathe in Destiny right now. And the changes they want to make is regarding weapon retirement. And they kind of talk about how what weapons could start to have a sort of shelf life of about 9 to 15 months before they kind of get retired. There's a lot of controversy about this because people don't want to give up the guns that they worked for. But I personally think it's great for the game. It keeps the meta fresh, and it's not like they'll be useless. Like he said, you can use it in other game modes. Anything that's just light dependent. I mean, if you need a highlight level, you're going to need the latest guns and the latest armor that can be infused up to those levels. Starting with the beginning of each expansion, they'll probably retire things from the last year, and you kind of have to move on to new weapons. Now, they're not going to touch exotics for now, so don't freak out too much. I know it's a big change, but I think this is really healthy for the game. It keeps things fresh, makes it so we can have guns like Recluse and Mountaintop, as broken as they are, and I really want to see those go personally, but I'm ready for some new ones that can be just as powerful. Another point of controversy that's been going on since they announced Trials is that artifact power was going to be enabled in Trials, meaning you could artificially increase your light level and have a massive advantage over anyone else who just doesn't have as much time as you. This was a massive problem immediately. The community was extremely vocal about it, and this comment from Cosmo on Reddit was downvoted almost 4,000 times. I mean, people were extremely upset about artifact power being enabled in Trials, and people were talking about it on Twitter all day. It didn't look like that was going to change, but out of nowhere, Luke Smith posted to Twitter right before the Bungie blog went up tonight, and he posted this tweet right here. "We will be disabling the artifact for power-enabled PvP, Iron Banner, and Trials until we can implement a power cap feature. This cap will allow us to weave artifact and power pursuit together while preventing unbound power growth in PvP." He goes on to say, "Somewhere down the road, but before we implement the cap, we're going to talk about what effect power has on combat and PvP. Think deep dive, numbers, etc." So they're really going to dive in depth. And he also says, "All of that is way more info than Twitter can take. See you soon." This was absolutely amazing to me. And honestly, I think it's the quickest I've ever seen Bungie respond to community feedback. Bungie's incredible at listening to their community, but it often takes them a very long time to implement on things because they spend so much time testing. The game is so delicate in terms of file size and actual maintenance that needs to be done and back-end testing before they can even implement things. Sometimes it takes a long time, but to see Luke Smith come out of the gates on Twitter and respond directly to this community feedback is absolutely massive. It shows me that they're taking Trials 100% seriously and that they're listening to the community. So keep your voices heard, because this is massive. I mean, it's going to be so much better this way. I am so happy they decided to make this change. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. I think this is amazing how quickly they responded to this, and it's going to put Trials in such a better space. I mean, you could feel the tension surrounding the community today as we've been awaiting some of the answers for this. But moving on, I'm going to get into the TWAB. I'm just going to read through it and kind of give some of my opinions. This is a really big blog this week, too. We've got tons of ability and class changes, some balance changes before Trials come back, and most of it seems to be really positive. So starting off, this week at Bungie, Trials is back on the menu. It's been an exciting week. You all came together and donated your stockpiles of fractaline to the ongoing effort to build the new lighthouse and usher in the return of Trials. As soon as the final stage was complete, you were invited to survey the completion of the project and light the beacon. We saw your signal as our cue to release this developer insight video confirming what many have been speculating for a while now. If you didn't check that video out, definitely go give it a watch. It's a lot of insights to them rebuilding Trials, what they wanted to do. Super important to get caught up on what's going on. But moving on, we've got some big subclass changes coming. And they state, with the return of Trials and a new season on the way, we're planning to shake things up with some changes to your Guardian's abilities. The dev team has all the details, so I'll let them do the talking. They said, hey Guardians, Trials is coming back and the combat system team has been hard at work preparing Destiny 2 for its arrival. We've made a number of big changes to the abilities sandbox, and instead of simply dropping them in the patch notes, we wanted to take this opportunity to offer transparency for our decision-making process. They go on to talk about how they kind of gather data about these weapons and abilities and how they're used throughout the game, but they also go on to say that data isn't everything, and sometimes the community perception overrides the data, and that's really nice to hear, because there are some guns that might not get used a lot, but they are extremely annoying, certain abilities that are broken, like handheld supernova and things like that. But moving on, the Warlock melee is getting a change. Not quite the change I was expecting, but I think this is actually even better. It says, Warlocks have long been at a disadvantage in melee fights because it takes them slightly longer than Titans and Hunters to recover from making a melee attack. So next season, we're extending the Warlock's basic melee range by 1 meter to a total of 5.5 meters. Warlocks will still melee slightly slower than the other classes, but they'll now have a 1 meter advantage. That's pretty interesting. If you can use this window to land the first melee attack in a slap fight, you'll likely emerge victorious. We feel this is a more interesting solution to melee disparity rather than homogenizing all of the melee attacks. I really agree with that. I like having some of the class identity, and it's nice that you could play the class differently to have an advantage. But they do say we'll be studying the data as it rolls in to make sure it's balanced. Moving on yet again. Sorry, I'm kind of blazing through this. It's a long TWAB, but there's a lot to cover in here. Titan barricades. This one is a little crazy to me. I really like Titan a lot, so this one's super interesting. A Titan's barricade is incredibly powerful in Trials because you can use it to safely resurrect your fallen teammates. Next season, we're creating counters to the barricade while also raising its health from 500 HP to 600 HP. Barricades will now take extra damage from special ammo weapons, anti-barrier weapons, that's very important, and certain heavy weapons. This change makes barricades sturdier while giving opposing players the option to use their special ammo to bring it down. The following weapons now do 30% extra damage to barricades: snipers, grenade launchers, linear fusions, machine guns, trace rifles, and anti-barrier weapons. I wonder if that means specific anti-barrier guns like Ariana's Vow, or if you have an anti-barrier mod. We'll have to wait and see and get some testing on that. The following weapons now do 60% extra damage to barricades: shotguns and regular fusion rifles. You'll see yellow damage numbers when hitting a barricade with a counter weapon, which always feels good. Next up, we've got one-shot abilities. This should be interesting. With the introduction of the Hunter's weighted knife in Season of Dawn, each class now has a neutral game ability that can kill PvP opponents in one hit. we've taken a pass at all of the one-shot abilities to tune their risk versus reward factor. We'll warn you that some of these changes look extreme on paper, but we made a point to make sure the abilities retain their overall feel. For the Titan's 3 shoulder charge abilities, we reduced their auto-targeting angle by 50%. That might sound like a lot, but acrobatic Titans could previously auto-target to make an instant 90-degree turn. That's completely true. It's utterly ridiculous, honestly. We also adjusted the lunge distance to 5.5 meters for both targeted and untargeted lunges. Targeted lunges were previously 6 meters, while untargeted was previously 4.5. These changes make for a more consistent lunge. For the Hunter's weighted knife, we've reduced its tracking significantly and created new tracking tech that will make the knife more faithful to its initial throw trajectory. So maybe it's a little bit harder to hit those headshots with a knife, which is good because honestly that thing could curve around a corner and hit someone. It's ridiculous. It's so much fun. And the long-awaited changes to Warlock's handheld Supernova. Thank God. We've made a number of changes to bring this ability in line with the other one-shot abilities. While part of Supernova's strength lies in its pairing with Controverse holds, which are also being tuned this season, our data indicated that even without Controverse hold, handheld Supernova needed to be adjusted. Here are the changes. Increased activation time by 0.6 seconds, reduced hold time from 3.5 seconds to 2.5 seconds, reduced range by 20%, tightened horizontal spread of bolts by 25%, bolt explosion now does self-damage, and reduced bolt explosion radius from 3 meters to 2.5. They say, in our playtesting, we found that the product of these changes is an ability that is still incredibly strong, but now has more of a risk versus reward ratio to commiserate with its power. After all, this thing can vaporize multiple opponents instantly. It absolutely can. It's ridiculous. There's a bit of a silver lining here. The tightening of the bolts leads to a more concentrated damage, improving its viability against supers. That is cool. I mean, you'll have a tighter spread. Maybe you can focus more of the damage onto one target and take down that super. That will be really nice. And overall, I think that's a very welcome change. That handheld Supernova wiping multiple people at the same time was absolutely ridiculous. So moving on, we've got general subclass tuning. We've made changes to a number of subclass paths in an effort to tighten the gameplay balance. For example, Stormcaller top tree, Striker bottom tree, and Arcstrider bottom have remained dominant in PvP for multiple seasons now, consistently beating out all other paths in both win rate and average efficiency. These paths have also ranked among the top PvE paths in terms of kills per minute. We've adjusted these paths and others to bring them closer to the middle of the pack. On the other end of the spectrum, paths such as Voidwalker bottom, Nightstalker bottom, and Striker middle needed some loves, so we've taken steps to lift them up. Interesting. I didn't feel like Nightstalker was that weak. Maybe Voidwalker, and Striker middle always just seemed kind of like a cheesy tree to me anyway. They go on to say, in the spirit of transparency, we take no joy in nerfing the abilities, weapons, and armor that we all love to use. We wish the answer to keeping the game balanced and fresh was always to buff the underperforming elements, but such an approach leads to power creep, the slow and steady increase of the average power of everything in the game. This is a massive problem in Destiny 2. It's something they just can't get away from. It's just the structure of the game. I mean, you want powerful rewards, but eventually that average power is going to come up and up. That's why Luke Smith talked about the weapon changes they're making and why the dev team's talking about it here. They go on and say, after all, as Destiny players ourselves, we go home and play the game too, and we want the game to be as fun and as healthy as possible. That's it from us today. You'll find more details about these changes and more when the patch notes drop in early March. Oh yeah, and Hunter trip mines are sticky again. Stay sharp, Guardians. Interesting. Holy hell. That was a wall of text to get through there. Some sweeping changes to the game. They all seem extremely positive to me. I am so excited Bungie is taking PvP balance seriously and bringing Trials back into the fold. The TWAB goes on a little bit to talk about some of the new Twitch Prime rewards. You can see them here. This is going to be for the month of March. You can get the chicken emote, a cool ship, the sparrow, this ghost here. You can see these here. This is a cool little thing that they're doing, I think. you can pick up some of these rewards, especially for new light players if you don't have some of the stuff. Some of the veteran players, I think, have all of these things, so you might not worry about it too much. There's a few resolved issues that they are including in the Season of the Worthy update in 2 weeks. Tower travel loading times will be returned to normal. Thank God. I think everyone will appreciate that. It has been like a space simulator trying to get to the tower. Literally takes years. It's ridiculous. The Prime Attunement buff will once again show up on new characters. The Pigeon and the Phoenix lore will become available again. That's good. And the empty Solstice of Heroes gift message from Tess will no longer show up. So the closing statements of the blog, they say, wow, it's been an eventful week and we've shared a lot, but we aren't done yet. All of this Trials of Osiris talk may have some of you wondering if there's going to be PvE content coming next season. Luke mentioned we have more info coming and shared a cool picture of next season's artifact, which you can now download in 4K here. There will be plenty to do for players who prefer to take on the minions of the darkness. Next week, we'll share more on what to expect in Season of the Worthy. Only one more TWAB before Season of the Worthy. Wow, what a ridiculous whirlwind of information we've had in the past couple of days. I know this video is a little long. I tried to touch on some of the key points, but I needed to be thorough and explain what these changes are that we're going to be expecting in a couple weeks here, especially with Trials coming up. Thank you so much if you made it to the end of the video. I appreciate you sticking around. Hit that subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on all my latest videos, all the news that's pouring out from Bungie right now. It's really exciting time to be a Destiny fan. Thank you for checking out the video today. Take care.